Blog Talk Radio.
Vichamo Afurakanu Afuraitkaitnut Neye AKANFO NANASOM Da Medinde Ojirafo Kwesi Radnehbata Akan Akwamumai Maruka Tibimu Ojirafo Ojiramai Mu. Greetings to all Afuraitkaitnut people, meaning Africans, black people. Today is AKANFO NANASOM Day, Ancient Authentic Akan Ancestral Religion Day. My name is Ojirafo Kwesi Radnehbata Akan. Ojirafo of the Akwamu Nation in North America, within Ojiramai, the purified nation, Afuraitkaitnut people in the Western Hemisphere. Yet I say we thank you once again for tuning into the broadcast. We have the chat room open. If you have any questions or comments in the chat room, and would like to log in and interact in the chat room, you must log in as a user in the chat room. If you don't have a username, you can sign up for one quickly in Blog Talk in order to interact. If you have a question or a comment on the phone line, simply hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised, and then we can interact with you on the phone line. For those who are new to the broadcast, we have 4 broadcasts on a weekly basis. We have AKANFO NANASOM, Ancient Authentic Akan Ancestral Religion, dealing specifically with the Akan expression of ancestral religion. First and foremost, because we are Akan. Number 2, because of the misinformation being propagated regarding Akan culture and philosophy, coming from individuals on the continent who have been infected with white pseudo religion, such as Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, and so forth, as well as white culture in general, and therefore their presentation of Akan culture, philosophy, cosmology, and so forth is infected as well. We also deal with Akan ancestral religion as brought into the Western Hemisphere, into North America, in the blood circles of our Akan ancestresses and ancestors, and we maintain Akan ancestral religion as Hoodoo in North America, which is the Akan ancestral religion in North America. So we deal with that on AKANFO NANASOM, Ancient Authentic Akan Ancestral Religion broadcast on Monday nights. On Benada Tuesday nights, we have Ojira, which means purification. We deal with ancestral religion in general, not just the Akan expression, but ancestral religion in general, and how it impacts every aspect of our lives as Afuraitkaitnut people. Ancestral religion, or Nanasom as we term it, Afuraitkaitnut or African ancestral religion, is in essence the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. That means through ritual we incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to incorporate in order to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And through ritual we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject and actions, and thus realign ourselves with divine order. So the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance are the expressive and constructive tools of ancestral religion. Through purification, Ojira, we operationalize Nanasom. Purification operationalizes our practice of ritually incorporating law and ritually restoring balance so that we can align every thought, intention, and action with divine order every moment of every day. And this is what we deal with when we're talking about Afuraitkaitnut ancestral culture. Every thought, intention, and action is aligned with divine order every moment of every day. And when we make mistakes in the course of our lives, we engage in ritual practice to realign ourselves with the law, restore balance to our lives so we can realign ourselves with order and continue functioning in a harmonious fashion. So we deal with Ojira, purification, purifying cosmology, the understanding of cosmology and culture, ritual practice, how it relates to every aspect of our lives. This is what we deal with on Ojirada Tuesday nights, Benada Tuesday nights. Opened up the chat room. I want to make sure if you're having a problem with the chat room, let us know. in the chat room if you can hear clearly, because we're trying a new audio piece, as well as people on the phone line. Let us know if you can hear clearly. We're trying a different connect as far as the audio. All right. We're going to try one more thing real quick before we finish. But on Wednesday nights, Awukuda Akwada, we have Awukuda Akwada Wednesday nights. We have Egwa Marketplace. We typically showcase a business organization. Egwa Marketplace Day. We have individuals come onto the show, talk about their businesses, organizations, and institutions. Their ancestral religious values inform their service to the Afuraitkaitnut community. We also talk about the philosophy behind economic development from an ancestral religious values rooted perspective. We have published our Okom Economic Development Model publication, talking about how we approach economic development in the Afuraitkaitnut community, African Black community, from a values perspective rooted in our ancestral religious values. So it's a holistic approach to economic development. Our Okom Economic Development Model, you can download part of that process we call Starve the Beast and Feed the Pride. So we identified Afuraitkaitnut business or Afuraitkaitnut business organization or institution, one per week, for optimal capital infusion. When you engage that process of starving the beast and feeding the pride, you make an assessment regarding what funds you would have potentially wasted with the whites and their offspring. Then you starve the beast and feed the pride, reallocate those funds away from the white business and redirect them to business organization or institution of the week. When we engage that process, when one person takes $10 or $15 away from the white business that they would have wasted it on in the course of a week and reallocates it to the business of the week, that's an infusion of $10 or $15. When we as a community, 1,000 people, for example, engage that same process, then that's a transfer of $10,000 to $15,000 away from a white business or white businesses into the accounts of the black business of the week. And that business will be able to hire immediately within the week, hire from within the community, expand their products and services to us, and it's a win-win situation, of course. If we do not engage such a process in a targeted fashion, then we simply leave thousands of dollars and, in fact, billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars in the hands of our absolute enemies, the whites and their offspring, thereby, by default, financing our own oppression. So we must engage that process of starving the beast and feeding the pride on a weekly basis. So this is what we deal with on our Egwa Marketplace. On Thursdays, we have Amain Sim, Affairs of the Nation. And for the people who came onto the phone line, if you can hear clearly, just hit the number 1 quickly, just to let us know you can hear clearly, because we're using a different audio piece. Hit the number 1 so we can see your hand is raised, and then you can close it back out. We just want to make sure that everybody on the phone line can hear. Okay, we had some Blog Talk has been having an issue with the volume with regard to the regular way people call in and use the communicate via the shows, via the specific apparatus. So we're using a different apparatus this time. We just want to make sure. All right. So for those who just came in, if you have a question or a comment, of course, you can go into the chat room. You must log in as a user in order to interact. And if you have a question or a comment on the phone line, simply hit the number 1, and we can see that your hand is raised. So for tonight's broadcast, the name of the broadcast, Akan Man, Akan Woman, Hoodoo Conjure Man, and Hoodoo Conjure Woman versus Kan Man, Kan Woman. So we're going to examine the nature of the Conjure Man and Conjure Woman in Hoodoo, a class of healer, healeress. We have proven in our book, HOODOO People, and the related publication, KANKYE, which is found in our HOODOO MAYN journal that we just released in October, the Akan Ancestral Religion, as we said, was carried in the blood circles of our Akan people, our ancestresses and ancestors who were transported to North America over 300 years ago. Because hoodoo was known to be of Akan origin, the hoodoo man and hoodoo woman also were called Akan man and Akan woman. Hoodoo, as we prove in our book, and we are the first to prove the etymology of the term hoodoo is an Akan term, coming from the Akan term undu, meaning medicine. Undu specifically coming from plant life, mineral life, mainly plant life, roots, plants, stalks, barks, and so forth, leaves, plant medicine, root medicine, and so forth. Undu. Undu also means to become heavy with the spirit, to have a presentiment of foreboding with spirit, to become heavy with the spirit, possessed by the spirit when you engage in ritual work. So undu means medicine from roots, trees, plants, and so forth. It also means to become heavy with the spirit. That's in the Akan language. Of course, hoodoo in North America is dealing with root work, root medicine, root doctors, and so forth. And this is why we have the Odumafo, the medicine-giving people, the Oduyefo, medicine-making or working people, the Odum Sinifo, the root doctors, literally meaning root doctors and so forth in Akan culture, root doctors, root workers, Odum Sinifo, root work, root doctors, Oduyefo literally means root workers, Odumafo, meaning that medicine-giving people. This is why in English we have the terms root doctor, root worker, hoodoo man, hoodoo woman, and so forth. We have these various terms, and then the term conjure, which is a title of hoodoo in North America. The religion is called hoodoo. It's also called conjure. The term undu, as we said, comes from Akan language. The term KANKYE comes from the Akan language as well. It means to utter incantations to bring down the spirits of the ancestresses and ancestors, the Unsamanfo, as well as the Abosom, the deities, the goddesses and gods of spirit forces that animate creation. We show that in our two publications. We also show that undu, meaning medicine, from plant life and so forth, can also be found in ancient Kanat and Kemet, Nubia and Egypt, in the Medutu, the hieroglyphs, and we show that medicine from plant life, mineral life, and so forth. And then undu also means to become heavy with the spirit. In the Medutu and the hieroglyphs and so forth, we show that as well. The same two meanings for the same word in both the contemporary language, Akan language, and our ancestral Akan language from ancient Kanat, which is a style of Nubia, the Kan land. And the people called the Kanit people, the quote-unquote Nubians. So we migrated from ancient Kanat, Nubia, to the western part of the continent, reestablished the empire Kanat, Nubia, so-called Ghana. Hundreds of years later, we migrated to the forest belt regions and reestablished Akan civilization in the forest belt. Hundreds of years after that, some of our people were forced from that region to the western hemisphere during the Mbusuo Ketye, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. And this is how Akan people came from ancient Kanat, Nubia, to West Afuraikai in Akana civilization, and then forced into North Central South America, the Caribbean, and Europe, and maintain Akan culture, Akan ancestral religion. Hold on one second. So this is why we show in our book, Afuraitkaitnut Bosom, for example, our people maintaining the language and the culture going back thousands of years, all the way up to this very moment. So KANKYE, just like undu or hoodoo, can be found in the Medutu, the hieroglyphs. KANKYE, which is an Akan term, meaning ka means to speak, utter, emit sounds, to say or tell. In the Akan language, che means to come forth, as in the coming forth of the sun, that great power coming forth from the darkness, rising up, the rising of the sun, the appearance of that power and that light. So KANKYE means to speak or say, ka, and then che, making something to come forth, like the coming forth of the sun, the coming forth of a spirit from the spirit realm to appear in the physical realm and bring that lighter power. KANKYE, to utter incantations to bring forth the spirit. In ancient Kemet, ka also means to speak, to say, to emit sounds, ritual prayer, incantation. Che means to come forth as the coming forth of the sun. The Medut, or the hieroglyph for Che, is literally the sun rising above the horizon. So the exact same meaning in ancient Kemet for Kanche is the exact same meaning in Akan language thousands of years later. Kanche, utter incantations to bring forth the spirit. And we continue to utilize that language in North America when we call our religion Kanje, which is later pronounced Conjure. The whites in our spring assumed we were saying Conjure. We were saying Kanje. So when they said, what are you practicing? We said Kanche, Kanje. They said, oh, they're speaking the Southern broken English. Instead of saying conjure, they're saying kanje, but they really mean conjure. So we're going to write down conjure every time they say kanje. We were saying kanche, which we've been saying for thousands of years. We were saying undu, also hoodoo, pronounced hoodoo, and so forth. We've been utilizing these terms for thousands of years. So we have shown that the whites in our spring understood, and of course our people understood, that our healers and healeresses, the Hoodoo Man, HOODOO Woman, the Odumani, which is an Akan term meaning a medicine-giving person, that's singular, Odumafo, of the Oduma folks or people, that's Akan term, but Odumani, singular, is the medicine-giving person. Odumani became Odumani or Hoodoo Man and Hoodoo Woman, the ones who are giving medicine, a class of healers and healeresses. We understood that even amongst the groups that we were operating within, forced into enslavement, there were Yoruba people here, Akan people, Ovambo, Fang, Fong, Ewe, Igbo, and so forth. We brought our languages here. So when we began to utilize our language to talk about our ritual practice, if somebody said they were practicing Undu, you knew immediately that that was an Akan-speaking person. If someone said that they practiced Juju, you know you were speaking to a Yoruba person. If they said they were practicing Vodou, you knew you were speaking to a Fon or Ewe person. If they said they're practicing Grigri, you knew that was a Bambara person or a Mindi-speaking person. If they said they were practicing Wanga, then you knew that was an Ovambo-speaking person or another Bantu-speaking person. So the names that we use to identify our religious practice was based on our ethnicity, our ethnic groups, just like our names, naming our children, based on our ethnic groups. So our Akan people, of course, named the children based on the Abosom, the deities that govern the solar, lunar, or planetary bodies that govern the 7-day week. In our book, Akradim Bosom, we proved that the 7-day week was established by the Akan in Afuraitkaitnut, in ancient Afuraitkaitnut, the ancient Akanfo, the ancient Nubians. We took that 7-day week into not only North Afuraitkaitnut, but up into the so-called Near East, into ancient KANKYE, which later became Sumer, and we carried that 7-day week there. Same deities with the same descriptive titles in Sumer, in the old Sumerian dialect that you find in the Akan language. Prove that, and this is the first time anybody has proven that, in our book, Akradim Bosom, Volume 1. So just like we name our children based, our Akradim, the soul name, based on the deity who governs the day of the week, because they govern the solar, lunar, and planetary body that governs the days of the week, we continue to do that in North America. People being born on Mondays, Tuesdays, whatever it is, we name the children based on that. We have those naming practices. We name the tradition based on our ancestral language. We name our people based on our ancestral language. We name our various practices based on our ancestral language. In our book, Hoodoo Mayn, the Hoodoo Nation Journal, for 13,017, we had our second annual Hoodoo Mayn, Hoodoo Nation Festival on October 16th here in D.C. We had the first annual last year on October 17th. This year was October 16th. In Washington, D.C., we published our book, Hoodoo Mayn, Hoodoo Nation Festival Journal for 13,017. We have the article Kanche, the Akan origin of the term conjure in Hoodoo, and we prove, as we just talked about, the term Kanche, and it comes from not only the term conjure being a corruption of the pronunciation of Kanche, and it's found not only in Akan language, but also in ancient Kemet. We show the Medusa, the hieroglyphs for that. But we also have a list of some of our podcasts. And when you see that, you'll see that the Undu Akwaba, the Akan origin of the hoodoo doll baby. The Akwaba, the so-called fertility doll that's very popular in Akan culture. Large head with the two arms sticking out and a straight body, sometimes with no legs, sometimes with legs, in the shape of an ankh because it is an ankh. Akwaba, unkwa, is the same as unkwa, meaning life in Akan, unkwa or ankh, meaning life in ancient Kemet. And when you see the actual ankhs in ancient Kemet that have arms and legs, then you understand that that's the same Akwaba doll with arms and sometimes arms and legs in Akan culture. We go into detail about that in our books. We show the Akwaba is the hoodoo doll baby, literally. We show that Moja and Ejapadye became Moja or Mojo, and Jack Padye or Jack Balye or Jack Ball, Jack Ball. So the Mojo and Jack Ball as talismans dealing with medicine and healing and protection come directly from the Moja and Ejapadye in Akan culture. We talk about Komfo, the Komfo, priest or priestess in Akan culture. Male or female can take on the title Kumfo, that became Gumfo and Gufa, and the Gufa doctor dealing with Gufa dust and so forth. In the hoodoo tradition, we still have that Kumfo, we still have that class of priest and priestesshood with the same name, unchanged over thousands of years. We talk about the Adanko Undu, the rabbit's foot, dealing directly with, coming from Akan culture, the Adanko and Adankowa, the male and female hair, and so-called, in North America, we translated that into the rabbit, since we interacted more so with rabbits than hares in North America. The Adanko, the male rabbit or hare, Adankowa, the female rabbit or hare, in the Akan, literally are hoodoo healers. We talked about the story of the Okramine, the dog who needed some medicine, and all of the other animals in the Akan tradition told him, you need to go to Adanko, the hare, quote unquote rabbit. He has that den undu, meaning that strong undu, that strong medicine. So he went to the hare, the quote unquote rabbit, to get undu, specifically the den or the very, very strong undu. The term den meaning strong or hard, powerful. Den and strong undu. Because the hare or the rabbit was one who had strong undu of medicine, he is a hoodoo, quote unquote, man, and the female hoodoo woman and so forth. We also show in that broadcast that we did on this subject that the male and female hare in ancient Kanat and Kemet, also called Adanko or Ananko and Anankoa, male and female deities. The male hare and the female hare are deities in ancient Kemet. Sometimes they are full body hair, male and female hare. Sometimes it's the body of a male and female with the head of a hare. These are deities in ancient Kemet. They are spirits in the Akan tradition who are healers and healeresses, a healer and a healeress, and they become a hoodoo in hoodoo man, hoodoo woman, so to speak, sacred animal totem in the hoodoo tradition in North America, and this is why we carry a hare's foot or quote unquote rabbit's foot as a talisman. We go into detail about that. The term hint, meaning a spirit that's aggressive or aroused and so forth, comes from the Akan term hinti, which is an aroused spirit as well, sometimes dealing with an ancestral spirit, sometimes dealing with a fire or very powerful, aggressive deity. They're called hint or hinti, and this is where you get the term hint. We talk about the term jo, which means to shout or to lament, and the ring shout dance, when we dance in a counterclockwise circle and get possessed by the Abzom. That's an Akan tradition. It's called jo. And then in English, once we get to the hoodoo tradition, we still say cho or shout. The whites in our spring just assumed we were saying shout. We were saying shout, but it comes from jo, which means to cry out, to lament, to shout, and so forth, dealing with spirit possession. and we still dance in that counterclockwise circle, the same direction of the spinning of Asase for our Earth Mother, to create a vortex of energy to draw in the spirits of the ancestresses and ancestors and the deities, the Nsamamfo and the Abosom. And we have a number of different other broadcasts as well. So we were going through those. That's in the Hoodoo Mayn, Hoodoo Nation Festival book. The links to all of that information is there. We were showing that every aspect of the Hoodoo tradition, that includes Adinkra symbols, Akan tradition, we utilize these as veves, similar to veves in Vodun. And in fact, some of the veves in Vodun include Adinkra symbols, because Akan people were connected in New Orleans and various other places. But we use Adinkra symbols in the same fashion as shrines, magnets for the Abosom and Nsamamfo, the deities and ancestral spirits, to draw their energy to us. This is the origin of, Medutu, so-called hieroglyphs. You find those Adinkra symbols, patterns in the Medutu, the hieroglyphs. These are the origins of what the whites in our offspring call sigils and so forth. We did a broadcast on that. We went into some detail about that. Every aspect of the Hoodoo tradition is defined by Akan culture. We also have kente cloth, which people see in our Akan tradition, which is known for kente cloth. We maintain that kente weaving, but instead of weaving, we use strips for quilt making, and the prolific quilt makers in our tradition in North America, they're using the same kente strip patterns with the strip cloth quilts and so forth. So kente cloth, Adinkra symbols. We have the Adinkra symbols in the ironworks and the gates, doors, windows, wherever black people were enslaved in the South and in different parts of the East and Northeast and so forth. You find these Adinkra symbols everywhere. You find that we were wrapping ourselves in the quilts of our grandmothers and sisters and mothers and so forth that had kente patterns on them. We were wrapped up in these kente symbols, Adinkra symbols and so forth. So every aspect of our Akan culture has been maintained, but that includes the names. So we want to get into these names because a Hoodoo Man, Hoodoo Woman, the Odumani, plural Odumafo, a certain class of healer and healeress. We continued that title. But the Odumafo, the Odumani, the Hoodoo Man, Hoodoo Woman was also called the Akan Man, Akan Woman, because if they were practicing Hoodoo, or if they were practicing Conjure or KANKYE, they were using the Moja, which became corrupted into Moja or Mojo, or the Ejapadie, which became the Japadie or Jabalie or Jakbal. If they were using all these various things, the people knew, oh, this is the Akan person. This is an Akan man or Akan woman. This healer or healeress, this priest or priestess, this is an Akan man or an Akan woman. We were identifying ourselves. The whites in our offspring feared the priests and priestesses, healers and healeresses of all of our various traditions, because it was through ancestral religion that we were empowered and inspired to kill the whites in our offspring, to kill the males, females, and children, massacre them, burn down plantations, free ourselves from enslavement. It was through ancestral religion that we were inspired by the Abosom that govern our blood circles, govern our heads. The Nananom Nsamamfo of our blood circles are spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors to rise up and massacre the whites in our offspring. So because of that, they feared ancestral religion. They tried to stamp out or suppress ancestral religion. Of course, we forced them into the Civil War and forced emancipation and forced abolition and repatriation initiatives and so forth. And we talk about that in our book. But the whites in our offspring, even after emancipation, they still feared that the blacks would end up overthrowing and massacring the whites in our offspring in this country and taking over the country. We would begin to murder, massacre all of them. That's what they feared. So they felt like the only way that they could control our population was to teach us Christianity, to brainwash and enslave our people. Of course, Brother Kamal Makesi Tahuti wrote the book, How to Make a Negro Christian, where he showed the whites in our offspring putting together these initiatives to take Christianity from plantation to plantation to plantation and brainwash our people with Christianity in order to make our people docile slaves. Of course, they did this with Okunfo Yao, Nat Turner, warrior Yao. He was born on Yao Da Thursday. Nat Turner was Akan We call him Okunfo Yao. Okunfo means warrior. Yao means one who was born under the deity Yao, who governs Yao Dao Thursday, governs the planet Yao. That divinity is called Heru in ancient Kemet. Heru also has the title Yao in ancient Kemet. He's called Heru Yao, Heru the fighter. And we continue to call him Yao in Akan tradition. Okunfo Yao, warrior Yao, Nat Turner. He was forced from the time he was a child to read the Bible and so forth. They started taking him around against his will to teach that nonsense. But when he said he learned from the spirits that he needed to wage war against the whites and their offspring, Yao Heru is a warrior divinity, a leader, a general with regard to warfare. He was listening to Nana Yao, the same deity we invoke today that possesses our people today, children and adults. It was Yao who led him and gave him the signs in the sky and in the earth to wage war and massacre the whites and their offspring. It wasn't the Bible. He wasn't listening, reading Exodus and all this other nonsense and propaganda. He was an Akan individual. He was connected to the Abosom Yao. He was connected to his Nananom Nsumafo, his Akan ancestresses and ancestors, and they led him to that revolution and resolution and so forth. So, but the key is the whites and our offspring were carrying and carting some of our people around, forcing them to teach this biblical nonsense to enslave the minds of the people. Part of the process of enslaving the minds is not only to teach them the fake religion, but to demonize the real religion. And the way they demonized it was through propaganda, to make our people believe that those healers and healeresses who could use plant life and mineral life and animal life and so forth to heal people, cure disease physically, but also and genetically, but also cure spiritual disorders, mental disorders, to protect people from physical danger, but also court cases and everything else. Whites and our offspring had to make our people begin to believe that that was all untrue. It was all superstition. It wasn't real. Started equating a hoodoo man and hoodoo woman with a charlatan, with a liar, with a fraud, snake oil salesman, and so forth. Someone who's just a criminal trying to get over on you. They started associating the term hoodoo with charlatanism. They did the same thing with voodoo and juju. Even up until today, brainwashed black people, when they hear the term voodoo, like someone's into voodoo, they say, oh, that's that nonsense. Oh, that's silly. Do you believe in voodoo? As though it's a big. A voodoo, phone and everyday tradition, is a deity. The spirit that animates the sun, moon, earth, mother, the spiritual forces that enliven every aspect of creation, they are the voodoo. That's a reality. It has nothing to do with belief. We don't traffic in beliefs. Hoodoo is dealing with medicine, with plant life, mineral life, and so forth. But it's animated by the Abosom, the deity. The term for deities in our Akan culture is Abosom, just like Vodou in Fon and Eve and Orisha in the Yoruba tradition. So the white and offspring have demonized these terms. When you hear voodoo, juju, hoodoo, and so forth, people will laugh at that, say it's superstitious, even though many of our people are getting back into their ancestral religious practices. But brainwashed Negroes will say it's evil, ignorant, charlatanism, fraud, and everything else. That comes from over 100 years ago when the whites and offspring began to put that propaganda out that hoodoo equals fraud. Hoodoo equals a charlatan. If someone says they can practice hoodoo, then they're just really trying to take your money. They're trying to trick you and everything else. They're charlatans. You really need to embrace this fake white cracker Jesus who never existed. There was never a black Jesus either. Didn't exist. No Yeshua, none of that. They did the same thing with voodoo, juju, wanga, grigri. Everything we practice, they sought to demonize that. So the hoodoo man and hoodoo woman, also called the Akan man and the Akan woman, because the Akan men and Akan women were also the hoodoo man, hoodoo woman. They're also the KANKYE man and the KANKYE woman, meaning conjure man, conjure woman. The Akan man and Akan woman, the whites and offspring began to call a con man and a con woman and con artist, or someone who's trying to con steal from you. They corrupted the original terminology to make it fit their lie. This is something that they've done with our languages across the board. We already show that even the term conjure, they tried to say that we were mispronouncing the term conjure. We can prove, of course, that KANKYE has always been used in our Akan language, literally two different words combined, ka meaning to speak, utter a sound, incantation meaning to come forth, as in the coming forth of the sun, KANKYE together means to speak or utter incantations to bring forth the abosom and the Odumafo, the deities and ancestral spirits. And then we further prove that, showing those same two words, ka and che, together with the exact same meanings in ancient Kemet, and we show the hieroglyphs that prove that. So we have a direct line from thousands of years ago in ancient Kanat and Kemet to West Afuraitkaitnut and Akan culture and language, all the way to North America, the same term, unchanged for thousands of years, used by the same people with the same DNA. Then the whites and their offspring will try to come in and say, no, they were just mispronouncing conjure. That's insane. But that's what they would try to say. In the same fashion, they would try to say that actually a con man or a con artist is something that comes from the English language, and we just began to use that. In reality, the hoodoo man, hoodoo woman became demonized by the whites and their offspring as a con artist. But they were saying, originally we were saying Akan man and Akan woman, Akan ethnic group. The hoodoo people were the Akan people. So that's why they were called Akan men and Akan woman, or conjure man, conjure woman, hoodoo man, hoodoo woman. So let's look at the way the white offspring misused terms and names. We can give it a quick example, and this goes across the board. Everybody knows who Jesse Owens is. We used this example before. Everyone knows who Jesse Owens is, famous track and field athlete. If you read about Jesse Owens and see what his true story is, his history is, and so forth, do something real quick. You can just pull it up on Wikipedia, and most people who haven't looked into the true story don't know a specific thing about his name. American track and field athlete, four-time Olympic gold medalist in the 1936 Games. The key was 1936 Summer Olympics in Berlin, Germany. He won 4 gold medals. Of course, at the time, Hitler and his people were promoting this idea of white Aryan supremacy, and black people were inferior and white people were superior. They were trying to promote that idiocy even though they knew it was inaccurate. They built that whole movement of white Aryan supremacy and so forth, and here's a black man from America who destroyed them in their own country, showing that the black man in America as well as the black woman is superior, and black people in general are superior genetically and spiritually, mentally than the whites and their offspring, superior to all of them. That's always been the case, of course, but it was proven on the world stage. The key about Jesse Owens is, and many people have read his story and everything else, his name was not Jesse Owens. His name was James Cleveland Owens. And because his name was James Cleveland, the abbreviation JC was what his parents called him, what his siblings called him, and his family members called him growing up. His name was JC, short for James Cleveland. So everybody called him JC. So when he went to school, amongst the whites and their offspring, they asked him, and you can look in Wikipedia for that. Just to give you a little background, Owens was the youngest of 10 children, 3 girls and 7 boys, born to Henry Cleveland Owens, a sharecropper, and Mary Emma Fitzgerald in Oakville, Alabama. JC, as he was called, was 9 years old when the family moved to Cleveland, Ohio, for better opportunities. As part of the Great Migration, when 1.5 million African Americans left the segregated South, and that was during the early part, when about 1.5 million of us left in the early part of the so-called 1900s, but later on in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, from the 40s to the 70s, that 30-plus year period, another 5 million plus of our people migrated from the South north. So over time, we had over 6 million people migrated from the South to the North. But during this period, he was born 1913. Let me just pull back on that. They left the South, went to Cleveland, Ohio. Now, when his new teacher asked his name to enter in her roll book, he said JC. But because of his strong Southern accent, she thought he said Jesse. The name stuck, and he was known as Jesse Owens for the rest of his life. So a cracker listening to what we were saying, what is your name? JC Owens. She said, oh, Jesse. He's like, no, it's JC. She's like, okay, Jesse. So she writes down Jesse. From that point on, she has renamed him Jesse, and for the rest of his life, he's known as Jesse, because they decided that's what they're going to call him. And the whites and their offspring were in control, and some of our people were not standing up to them and so forth and allowed them to do what they did. So he becomes known as Jesse from that point on. Totally inaccurate, but this is how they would change these terms. When we say we're practicing KANKYE or KANKYE, the whites and their offspring who are writing down these different things and interviewing our people and saying, what do your people practice? We say KANKYE. They say, oh, they're saying conjure, and they write down conjure. If they say, what is this talisman you're using? Well, we're using moja, and we're putting it in this little moja bag, a moja hand and so forth, and utilizing this for protection and healing and everything else. They'll say, oh, it's mojo. So they write down M-O-J-O instead of M-O-G-Y-A, moja, as we were saying. Every aspect of the tradition, very often they will mispronounce and so forth. They did the same thing with the names of the days of the week. We have names like Ajua and Kwajo or Kojo, somebody born on Joada. The name of the title of the moon is Ajo, meaning the cool one. In the Akan language is also Jo in ancient Kemet, in the Coptic dialect. We're named Kwa Jo, or servant of Ajo, or Ajoa, a servant of the divinity, the moon. There's a male and female moon divinity. So Kwajo and Ajoa are child of the divinity that governs the moon. The praise name for Kwajo or Kojo and Ajoa is Edjo and sometimes Jojo. So if a child was born on Monday, Joda in Akan culture, they'll be called Ajoa as a female, Kwajo or Kojo as a male. A praise name or Umrane would be Jojo or Edjo, named after the divinity of the moon. The whites and offspring, I ask you, and our people, even if we didn't speak the language fluently in North America, we knew that if the baby was born on Monday, we recall, okay, the name should be Jo or Edjo or Jojo or Kwajo or Ajoa, but we ended up utilizing the praise names Edjo or Jojo. Jojo very often for a male, Edjo for a female. So we would name the babies. We would still have these names. So when you look through a family tree of people who are of Akan descent, they may not speak the language, but when you line up their birth dates and the days that they were born on, then look at the chart for the Akan names of the days of the week, you'll find that Ben for Kwabenna, the servant of the deity Ben or Benna, Tuesday, then you have a child name, they name the boy Ben, or the female Benny, because she's named after Abena, the female divinity, Abena governing Tuesday. So you have Ben or Benny. You look at the day of the week, you'll find that they were born on Tuesday because they're Kwaben, Kwabenna, or Benny, Abena, or Benny, and so forth. You'll find Jojo or Edjo on Mondays. You'll find Emma, which is a variation of Amma. They'll be born on a Saturday, which is female divinity governing Saturday. You'll find that Afiba or Effie is a Friday born. So you find somebody named Effie. You look at the day of the week they're born. It turns out they were born on a Friday. Or Fiba. The whites and offspring, for example, heard us say, well, what's the name of your daughter? Fiba. And they'll say, oh, she was trying to say Phoebe. So instead of A-F-I-B-A, Afiba, being a child of the Yabosom deity Afi, born on Fida, Friday, Afiba, they'll say, oh, they were trying to say Phoebe, and they'll spell it P-H-O-E-B-E, Phoebe. And from that point on, they're naming the person Phoebe. In reality, it was Afiba. So this is how the whites and our offspring would change the names of our people in written documents, even though we knew what we were saying. We were naming our children after deities of the days of the week all the way up until the present day. Essie is the name of a female born on Sunday. You find people named Essie. Our people assume, oh, that's just a southern country name and so forth. It's actually, you look at the day of the week they were born, their mother, father, or both attuned to the divinity Essie and named the child Essie and so forth. So, same thing with the praise name of somebody, Kwesi or Akwesi. One of the praise names is CC, SISICC. The name of the divinity is Asi, which is Asar, Asir. CC is a praise name, a reduplication of that name, just like Ejo becomes Jojo, and Fi or Fiba, Afi becomes Fi. We have that doubling practice, CC, SISI, the title of Asi, the divinity. Then you have somebody named CC, that's the name of the child. Offspring will say, oh, his name must be CECE, maybe short for Charles Cleveland Johnson or CC Johnson. Maybe they were just using an abbreviation named CC, and we're going to call him CC. But in reality, it was CC, meaning a child of the deity Asi. So when you look at the names of the days of the week, the deities that govern the days of the week, the days that people were born on, if they're Akan in North America, and you look at, line it all up, you will find that people have been naming our children after these deities, whether it's a middle name or a quote-unquote nickname. The name that they utilize on a regular basis turns out to be the same Akradim we've been using for thousands of years. So the whites and our offspring will mispronounce these names either through ignorance or deliberately to change the meaning of different things. It was deliberate with regard to the Akan man and Akan woman, the Conjure man, Conjure woman, the Hoodoo man, Hoodoo woman. The Hoodoo man and Hoodoo woman, they knew came from the Akan regions of so-called Ghana and Ivory Coast today. They knew they came from that region. These were these Akan, quote-unquote, slaves. The Akan man and Akan woman was a healer, healeress. They were stirring up the quote-unquote enslaved people to wage war. So we couldn't have the Akan men and the Akan women who were very often leading revolts and so forth, revolutions, resolutions. We couldn't have them continuing their practice, so we have to demonize their practice and even demonize their name and demonize their work. We have to demonize the word hoodoo, demonize the word conjure, demonize the title Akan man, Akan woman, demonize everything. This is what Gufa doctor and everything else. This is white neural spring. Let's go some detail how they say comes from. You can prove it from an ethnic perspective. Akan people coming from the Akan territories, we still speak the same language with the same titles, the same deities that we're named after. We're still utilizing the same descriptive titles of our practice that we've been using for thousands of years and can prove that. All these different things are still in place. But when it comes to Akan men and Akan women, the Akan man, Akan woman, instead of saying they're a Akan artist, Akan man or Akan woman, how does that come into play? Because the key is we were identifying ourselves as Akan. Just like a person would identify themselves as Fawn and Eve and so forth, our people in North America who are Akan, our ancestresses and ancestors here, we're still calling one another Akan. So we never even lost the name of our ethnic group. We continue to utilize that. So the whites and our offspring sought to dispossess us of our identity. So they will say the term con man or con artist and so forth comes from the confidence trick. So you look up the confidence trick. Confidence trick synonyms include confidence game, confidence scheme, rip-off scam, stratagem, and so forth. Is an attempt to defraud a person or a group after first gaining their confidence, used in the classical sense of trust. Confidence tricks exploit characteristics of the human psyche, just such as dishonesty, vanity, and everything else. Then you get to the terminology. The perpetrator of a confidence trick or a quote-unquote con trick, confidence trick, synonyms include confidence game, confidence scheme, rip-off scam, stratagem, and so forth. Is an attempt to defraud a person or a group after first gaining their confidence, used in the classical sense of trust. Confidence tricks exploit characteristics of the human psyche, just such as dishonesty, vanity, and everything else. Then you get to the terminology. The perpetrator of a confidence trick or a quote-unquote con trick is often referred to as a confidence or a quote-unquote con man or a con artist or a grifter. Samuel Thompson, 1821 to 1856, was the original quote-unquote confidence man. Thompson was a clumsy swindler who asked his victims to express confidence in him by giving him money or their watch rather than gaining their confidence in a more nuanced way. A few people trusted Thompson with their money and watches. Thompson was arrested in July 1849. Reporting about this arrest, Dr. James Houston, a reporter of the New York Herald, publicized Thompson by naming him the confidence man. Although Thompson was an unsuccessful scammer, he gained reputation as a genius operator mostly because Houston's satirical writing wasn't understood. The National Police Gazette coined the term confidence game a few weeks after Houston first used the name the confidence man. A confidence trick is also known as a con game. A con, a scam, a grift, a hustle, a bunco, a swindle, a flim-flam, a gaffle, or a bamboozle. The intended victims are known as marks, suckers, or gulls, meaning gullible. When accomplices are employed, they are known shills. And then they talk about short and long cons. Why is this key? They will talk about the first quote-unquote confidence man or con man. It was deemed that in 1849, just a little bit before the so-called Civil War. When you look at the term con, meaning in swindling, look at the etymology of the term, 1889 in American English. You can see this on Etymology Online. American English from confidence man, 1849, from the many scams in which the victim is induced to hand over money as a token of confidence with a sense of assurance based on insufficient grounds, dates from the 1590s, but that's the term confidence. But the term con, as in swindling, goes back to 1849 in American English. Con meaning negation, mainly pro and con. In the 1570s, short for Latin contra, meaning against. But as far as something being a swindle, that goes back to American English, 1849. But the key here that they're not pointing out is why does they call him the confidence man? Because he practiced a confidence trick or a con trick. The key here is con and trick. When we go back to the hoodoo tradition, anybody who practices the hoodoo tradition understands that the ritual practices in English became known as tricks. So if you Google some information on that, and one of the works we often talk about is Mojo Working by Dr. Katrina Hazard, glossary in the back. You get this information from just basic definition all over. For example, if you pull up any website talking about hoodoo laying down tricks. The laying of tricks is a big part of hoodoo. This is just one of these many sites. And they typically, when it comes to cosmology and origins and so forth, they have no knowledge of what they're talking about. They're just repeating certain information. The laying of tricks is a big part of hoodoo. You can lay a trick anywhere the person will walk, or place the hoodoo powder or conjure oil on anything the target will touch. You can even add it to the sprinkle water that you use to iron their clothes with, and so forth. They're talking about laying tricks. The method is called tricks. You can pull up something real quick to see in another site, an African American hoodoo practice working a spell in which materials such as powders, roots, or herbs are deployed in specific locations where they will be touched by the victim. It's called laying down a trick. Tricking or throwing down for someone, as in you throw down for her. One of the basic aphorisms passed along from teachers to students is lay your trick, walk away, and don't look back. Now, why were they calling these things tricks? And this, again, when they talk about the confidence man, he was labeled that in 1849. But they had already began demonizing hoodoo prior to that. They began forcing people to embrace Christianity in the 1820s and into the 1830s. They were already beginning to demonize the term hoodoo, the term voodoo and so forth, and juju and everything else, trying to say it was charlatanism. The Akan man or Akan woman was a Kan man or Kan woman. Why? Because they were charlatans. They were trying to steal money from you. You really need to listen to Jesus. They're not telling the truth. They don't really have medicine. They can't really communicate with spirits, or they're just communicating with demons. They're not telling you the truth because they're charlatans. What they're really trying to do is trick you. So hoodoo became known as utilizing tricks. In the English terminology, the term trick means someone's being fooled. It's not real. In English, when they talk about magic, they're talking about something that's not real. A magic trick is just something that's an illusion, but it's not real. Of course, when our people are dealing with the spirits of our ancestors and the deities, we're dealing with something real. But we were speaking English. And when we were talking about utilizing ritual practice to make something happen, to make the unseen impact the seen, in the English language that we learned, because we lost fluency in our ancestral language, we were taught that the word for making something unseen impact the seen was called a trick, or you were doing a trick. So we were like, oh, that must be the word for what we're doing, so we're going to use that word. We didn't understand the different connotations of the term trick as used amongst the whites and their offspring. Because, of course, they couldn't make anything happen with any deity or any spiritually cultivated ancestor or ancestress, because they do not have it. So our people began utilizing that terminology because the whites and their offspring taught us that language, and we repeated that language. So the laying down of tricks, hoodoo spells, and hoodoo ritual practices became known as tricks or tricking somebody. That comes from the whites and their offspring demonizing hoodoo and saying the priest or the priestess, the healer or the healeress, wasn't really a healer or a healeress. They weren't really taking your illness away from you. They're tricking you. They're like a magician. They're dealing with illusions. They're an artist. They're painting a picture or a landscape, but it's really not happening. They are tricking you. They are charlatans and superstitions. So they are, quote unquote, conning you. This is prior to 1849. This is prior to the label confidence man or con man used in 1849, but the confidence game originally being called a confidence trick or a con trick. The con trick isn't really a confidence trick. They began to speculate and then misrepresent the origin of the term con, and they would associate it with confidence and everything else later on. But the con trick or the con spell or the con ritual, it wasn't a scam or magic and so forth. It was the Akan ritual from the Akan man or Akan woman, meaning hoodoo man or hoodoo woman and so forth. The whites and offspring simply demonize the term. So just as today, as we said, you hear a black person, if you hear them say hoodoo, they don't know hoodoo means medicine from plant life and mineral life, empowered by the Abosom and the Nananom and Samalfa. They just think hoodoo means superstition, negative witchcraft, charlatanism, tricks, magic, nonsense, evil, self-destructive, and all of that. Same thing with Vodou, same thing with Juju, same thing with Wanga, Grigri, and so forth. In the same fashion, the term trick was utilized in the same way. So we take this information back. We utilize the proper terminology coming from our people. When we said we're Odumafo or Odumani or Hoodoo or Hoodoo man, Hoodoo woman, we're identifying ourselves, number one, as Akan people. Number two, is a specific class of healer or healeress. when we say root worker, root doctor, when we say Gufa, doctor, talking about Kumfa, a specific class of priest or priestess, healer or healeress. When we say Akan man or Akan woman, we were talking about ourselves as Akan people, specifically practicing our ancestral religion that we have maintained not just hundreds of years in North America, but for thousands of years, going back to ancient Kanat and ancient. So now we want to look real quick. If you have any questions or comments on the phone line, simply hit the number 1 so we can see that your hand is raised. If you have any questions in the chat room, you must log in as a user in order to interact in the chat room. If you don't have a username, you can sign up for one quickly in Blog Talk so you can interact. Okay. So one of the questions in the chat room, Nchiyama, what governing planet does Netert, Sekat, and Neter influence spiritually expressed during Apet while impressing other planets, animals, and us? So the first part you said Netert, Sekat, which you spelled it S-E-K-A-T. So I want to make sure, are you talking about Sekhmet or the different spelling, Seket, or are you talking about Seker or Sekert? Which deity are you talking about? Because you spelled it S-E-K-A-T. I want to make sure I'm addressing the right one. Because you said Netert or Ntorot, which is the female divinity, and then you said Ntoro or Neter influence. So are you talking about Sekhmet or Seket, or are you talking about Seker? Let me know which one you're talking about. Okay, so now you're talking about Serket. Okay, so Serket, S-E-R-K-E-T. Sometimes they spell it S-E-R-Q-E-T. So Ser or Serket, that's a scorpion divinity. So when you look at that scorpion, you'll see she has a scorpion on her head. She's like a warrioress divinity. You know, the scorpions with their, stingers and so forth, they're powerful divinities. They release that poison, they attack and so forth. So she is connected with Benna, so-called the planet Benna, Abenna. She's connected with that fiery energy of that so-called white star spring called the planet Mars. But she's also, of course, connected to the constellation that the white star spring called Scorpio. This is where they get that from. Recall that when we're talking about so-called Scorpio, which is really Serket, the female divinity Serket, we're not talking about, for those who hadn't heard the previous broadcast, we're not talking about the tropical astrological chart with 12 months of 30 days. We're not talking about the sidereal astrological chart with 12 months of constellations of 30 days, because both of those are inaccurate. The vast majority of the assignments are inaccurate. When you look at the astronomical zodiac, there are actually 13 constellations that cross the ecliptic in the course of a year, and each one of the time periods are not 30 days each. The shortest one is 7 days, the longest one is 45 days, and then you have other days in between. In fact, give me 1 second. I want to pull up the chart real quick. Okay, so I wanted to make sure to give you the correct dates, just to for that specific divinity that you're talking about. I want to give the dates for that. If somebody wanted the chart, you can just look up astronomical zodiac. You can Google that in different places, and at least you will see, typically they will have a chart comparing a tropical zodiac and the astronomical zodiac. When you look at astronomical zodiac or real astronomical zodiac or whatever, you'll see the list of the 13 constellations. Of course, they'll have the fake names, the Greek names and so forth, but the lengths of the days and the beginning of the dates and so forth. Scorpio so-called Scorpio or Scorpius, which is really the divinity Serket, where they got Scorpion from, November 23rd to November 29th. So it only lasts 7 days. Not 30 days, but 7 days. Then right after that is Ophiuchus, which is actually dealing with Sekhmet, the serpent bearer. They call it, Ophiuchus means the serpent bearer. That's the 13th constellation that's not added into the regular chart, the tropical chart or the sidereal chart. The reason why they would say it was 12 constellations because a couple of thousand years ago, because of the precession of the equinoxes, the tilt of the earth and everything else, there were only 12 constellations crossing the ecliptic in the course of a year. Because of the position of the earth in relation to the constellations, it has shifted, and now there are 13 constellations that cross the ecliptic in the course of 365 and a quarter days. That 13th constellation that now crosses the ecliptic as well, the whites and offspring call it Ophiuchus. When they show the image, they'll show the white fictional character Asclepius, the great fictional healer, physician, and so forth. They stole that from Imhotep, the great healer. So when they talk about Asclepius as the serpent bearer and he's the divine healer and all this other stuff, and he's carrying the serpent representing his wisdom and healing, and Ophiuchus meaning the serpent bearer, that's what they're talking about. However, they stole it from Imhotep, the great healer, the great wise one, and so forth. But at the time that the Greeks invaded Kemet, you have Ptah, Sekhmet, and Nefertim, which is the major triad of divinities in the so-called Memphis. By the time the Greeks invaded Kemet, they also had Ptah, Sekhmet, and sometimes they would place Imhotep in the place of Nefertim. Nefertim is always there, he's a deity, but Imhotep was also placed there as a child of Ptah and Sekhmet because of the work he put in with regard to the society. He was a deified ancestor. He didn't become a deity. We don't become deities. There's a difference in class of being from human beings and deities. But an ancestor or ancestress who live in harmony with divine order, once they make their transition, they become more powerful, they become more influential, and they guide us while we're here on earth, of course. They're family members. He became a quote-unquote deified or honorable ancestor. So he was also placed in that position as part of that family, so to speak. So Ptah, Sekhmet, and Imhotep was part of that triad and so forth. He, as a child of Sekhmet, was a divine healer. Sekhmet is the divine killer, warrioress divinity, lioness divinity, but she's also a divine healeress. Her priests and priestesses were called Sunu. The term Sunu literally means physicians. So her priests and priestesses were called Sunu, they were called physicians. Just like in Akan culture, the Odumafo is a class of healers and healers, but they're also physicians, dealing with herbal medicine, but ritual medicine as well. Root doctors, literally. So, since he was a child of Sekhmet, when you see Sekhmet, she's a lioness divinity, but she has the serpent, circular serpent on her head surrounding this. She is the serpent bearer. And this is why Imhotep was associated with her. Imhotep, the whites and offspring, as her quote-unquote son. Imhotep was corrupted into Asclepius and later Hippocrates and all that other nonsense. But Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, being associated with Asclepius, which is corruption of Imhotep, who was a child, is a deified ancestor of Sekhmet, and she's the real serpent bearer. So this is where it comes from. So you have Scorpio, or really Serket, November 23rd to November 29th. So starting in a couple of days, we move. If you look up in the sky, you will see the constellation Serket, so-called Scorpio, November 23rd to the 29th. It only lasts 9 days, and then it moves directly into the serpent bearer, which is really Sekhmet, November 30th to December 17th. That's 18 days, and then it goes into, we talked about last week, the divinity Neith, so-called Neith. She's a divine archeress, but she's a primordial divine mother divinity as well, divine weaver and so forth. This is where they get Sagittarius from, the great archer and so forth, December 18th to January 18th, which is only 32 days. And then it goes through and you'll see, for example, September 16th to October 30th, that's Virgo, which comes from our set, quote unquote, virgin. That's a 45-day period. So you'll find the longest period is 45 days. The shortest period is 7 days. They are not 12 months or 30 days each, like a tropical or sidereal astrological charts. The real zodiac is talking about when you look up in the sky, what constellation is actually there on a particular day. How long is it there before you see the next constellation? So it's actually reality. So let me know if that answers the question. But Serket is that Scorpion divinity, fiery healer, but also a divine killer with regard to the time of the year in a couple of days. November 23rd through November 29th is the time of that, divinity. And some people have children of that divinity and they carry her energy and they're naturally aligned with that force of nature throughout the course of their lives. Okay. All right, so we're going to get on the phone line.
What's up? Can you hear me, brother?
Okay, Michelle, what's up?
I had a question in regards to getting that Ashiwadefo, whether in person or through distance. Is there a way that we can, as African people, do so?
You said getting at them? You mean as far as waging war, that kind of thing?
Tripping up and waging war. Like background information.
Yes. So and it's both. And it depends on what needs to be done at specific times and so forth and what your role is and so forth, but it's both. It always goes back. We're dealing with anything with regard to ritual practice, whether it's learning something or engaging in ritual work. It goes back to, and it's foundationally going back to your, what we call in Samai Komere, your ancestral shrine, learning directly from your people, evoking your ancestresses and ancestors that are connected to your direct blood circle. Of course, Afurakanu and Afuraitkaitnut people only. Those are the only people who can be your ancestresses and ancestors, but dealing directly with them on a consistent basis. And of course, the abosom that governs your own kra, your soul, your divine consciousness, and your blood circle. But going to the Nsamanfo to learn specifically what's in harmony with order, what needs to be done. Do we need to confront a specific situation in person, hand to hand, or do we need to confront or send some energy in a certain direction? Do we need to conscript one of our Nsamanfo to go and make something happen on a spiritual level, or do we need to do something physically ourselves? And it just depends on the situation. But it always goes back to our consultation with them and the manner in which we need, specifically coming from a specific clan, specific blood circle, the manner in which we need to approach a situation. It's the same thing with healing. Like you may be allergic to certain foods and your brother or sister may not be allergic to them, so you need to know specifically for you what's the best way for you to take in protein and minerals and vitamins and so forth from what foods, whereas your brother or sister may have to get the same proteins and carbohydrates and vitamins and minerals from a different foods or avoid certain things. It's like we have to acknowledge that kind of difference so we can live harmoniously every day without making ourselves sick or without, omitting certain things and compromising our immunity. In the same way, what is the way that we, based on the way we're constructed spiritually with regard to our clan, what's the best way that our clan addresses specific issues? What kind of medicines do we use? What kind of ritual practices do we use based on our clan? And that comes directly from your own people. So you're not dependent on anybody outside of your own clan. You get that directly from your own people. And yes, it's done, whether it's done physically, the best way to go against our enemies physically, the best time of the day, time of the night, time of the year, time of the month, the best kind of weaponry, physical, chemical, biological, whatever it is, or if it has to do with something non-physical, what's the best means by which to engage that process. But it's both. We do both, physically as well as non-physical. But it starts off with consultation with your Odumafo at the shrine. And that's key just in general, whether it's learning or engaging in ritual practice. There's no way, because sometimes we get emails and things like that. Someone sent us an email and said, hey, I need a monetary ritual, or hey, I need this, or hey, I need that. There's no getting around developing a relationship with your Odumafo. Just like there's no way for the cells in your body to get around a relationship with the organ that they're a component part of, interfacing with that organ and the other cells within the organ in a harmonious way so they can utilize the power that's moving through that organ that they have access to in an optimal way. There's no way to get around that. We must develop that relationship with our direct blood circle ancestresses and ancestors, and they give us those specific ritual practices to overcome issues, whether it's court cases or illnesses or specific confrontations that we need to, win.
Awesome.
So let me know. Does that make sense?
That answers my question. Do you know anything about the Makua people?
You said McCoy?
Makua? Mozambique?
Are you spelling it M-A-C-A-U?
M-A-K-U-A?
M-A-K-A-U-A?
Yes, brother.
I would have to check. I'm not off the top familiar. I may have seen some information. I would have to check and see. Do you know what larger group they're related to?
Well, they are the larger group, but they are related to the Zulu, Bantu in central Mozambique to southern Africa. And I think, honestly, just with DNA testing, but also just with research that I've done and going to my ancestral altar, like constantly, that these are my ancestors. So it's just with things that are happening and then similarities, not just the physical, but even things that I've done as a child all through my development right now in African spirituality has brought me to them people with just, again, things that I didn't know I was practicing African spirituality. From what my research has found has been a part of them.
Okay. And that's exactly the way it's done. So when you look at, sometimes they'll break the groups up into, for example, Niger Congo A and Niger Congo B and so forth, but we're all connected. So whether it's you're talking about West, Central, and South Afuraitkaitnut, all the way across, whether it's the western part of the continent into the so-called Bantu-speaking people and so forth, we all are directly related. So you have over 300 million, quote-unquote, Bantu speakers and so forth, the Niger-Congo speakers, as they would say, recently related, very recently connected, directly connected. Then you have people who are what they would call Nilo-Saharan, people in East Africa, like in the Horn, like Somalia and Eritrea and Ethiopia and Djibouti and so forth, in those different areas. They all are part of an Eastern group. We're part of more of a central, we became a more central and Western group. We're all related distantly, period. But the ones in West, Central, and South Africa are more recently related, blending blood circles and so forth. So you will find that whether you're talking about Akan or Yoruba and Evi and different people in the western part and the central part and the south part of the continent, when we're talking about the Orisha, Abosom, Vodou, and so forth, and utilizing terminology, you will find that many of these same root terms are found. When you start studying that Makua language, you will find that the same root terms are found with the same meanings because we share language, but we also share some ritual practices, even though the expressions are slightly different based on the culture, but it's very similar. So you'll find some, congruence all across West, Central, and South Africa because we're more recently related. So even when people are listening to Akan stuff or listening to Yoruba stuff, you'll find a connection. But that's the way what you're doing right now, that's the way you begin to confirm. And they direct you to information. You go to Odumafo to confirm. They give you more information. They will continue to confirm these things for you. It won't be just one time they give you some information or a clue, and then you just have to sit on that for the next 5 or 6 years. They will consistently confirm it in different ways, whether it's through text, through directing you to a website, putting somebody in front of you when you're on the bus or on the train in the morning who repeats the information that they gave you ritually or put in front of you on a computer screen or made you happen to look at a specific page or a specific video or whatever it is. They're constantly pushing you and placing you in the position to come in contact with the information that will confirm what they keep, giving you or feeding you. So you'll get to the point where you achieve that 100% confidence because you have multiple confirmations. So as long as you're consistent with that communication and consultation with the Odumafo, your ancestors, then those multiple confirmations will continue to come until you achieve that 100% confidence. And you can verify it in various different ways.
May I say, brother, thank you so much. I am getting all of that. And thank you. May I say.
Okay. We appreciate the call. Okay, so we're going to get back on the phone line. We wanted to make sure we didn't miss anything in the chat room. All right, and also the event, we have an event coming up on December 17th. So the last event that we had was October 16th, our Hoodoo MAYN, Hoodoo Nation Festival, which was October 16th here in Washington, D.C. We had a number of vendors and so forth, presenters on different aspects of the Hoodoo tradition. We're going to be posting the videos for that soon. This is the first month of November that we didn't have an event in the past 13 months, but we're preparing for our event. So we had an event from previous September, over a year ago, all the way up to this October 13th straight month of having events in the D.C. area. And then we were doing presentations in different cities as well. November, just because of scheduling, we didn't have an event in November, but we're going to get back on it. December 17th here in Washington, D.C. This will be our first Ka Ka'et event. The term Ka and Ka'et are the male and female terms for soul, divine consciousness, the deity that dwells in the head region of the Afurakanu male, Afuraitkaitnut female, that guides you throughout the course of your life. But Ka and Ka'et are also the expansive and contractive male and female terms for food or offerings in the language of ancient Kemet. So Ka and Ka'et means soul, divine consciousness, but it also means food or offerings. So we're having this Ka Ka'et event, this soul food event. And this particular event, the vendors that we will have will specifically be food vendors, raw vegan food as well as cooked vegan food, baked vegan food as well. And then we'll also have organic coffee and organic tea. So, and we'll be doing a presentation. I'll be doing a presentation with regard to Kemet and the proper contextualization of Kemet within ancestral religion as that ancestral component of our various expressions of ancestral religion. Sometimes people try to make the culture of Kemet some kind of separate tradition, like saying I'm into the Kemetic tradition as opposed to the Yoruba tradition, as opposed to the Akan tradition. In reality, when you understand that our people migrated from ancient Kanat, Nubia, and Kemet to different parts of the continent thousands of years ago and maintained that same culture, we're still practicing the same culture. We're worshiping the same deities. And if you look in the languages, you find the descriptive titles are the exact same titles you find in the Medusa of ancient Kemet. So we have the same culture with the same people moving to different areas, but having different expressions of that primordial culture that goes back to ancient Kanat, which is Nubia. Some of our people migrated north to establish and settle Kemet. So the proper contextualization of Kemet within the culture. We also have another presenter. We're going to confirm that later, so we don't want to put that information out, but the basic information with regard to the date and the time and the event space and so forth, when you go to our Guamu Casa page on the website, you'll see that information. We'll put that in the chat room right now. Guamu Casa and Akan means public speech. So we have the flyer. You can download the flyer. You'll see the basic information there. Of course, the event is free and open to Afurakanu and Afuraitkaitnut people only, which is all of our events are. We're going to give away a free copy of our book, Kemet, Hina, Ntoro, The Black Nation and Divinity, to everyone who comes to the event. So whenever we have our events monthly and wherever we go around the country, our events are always free, always open to Afurakanu and Afuraitkaitnut people only. And we always give away a free copy of one of our books to everyone who attends. We have given away over 1,100 of the softcover versions of our books for free to our events here in DC and across the country. We're going to continue that process. We've published 24 books to date. We have more books coming out. They range between $8 and $13. Most of them are $9 or $10. The ebook versions of all of our 24 books are free downloads from our website. We make our books free downloads in the ebook versions because sometimes our people are not working. They don't have the funds. They may not have $9 or $10 to send out to purchase a book, but the information is too important to hold that for ransom. So the ebook versions, which are full versions, we make them available for free. And then if people would like to purchase the softcover versions, those are available as well on the website. Order those, we ship them out to you. And then we have discounts. The first 5 books is $40. That's a 20% discount. You get Afuraitkaitnut, the origin of the term Africa, Maranechi, divine law, love, and divine hate. The Okra complex, the soul of AKANFO, talking about the nature of the Ka is the soul, that's the divinity. Uben Sheng, the ancestral summons, where we're talking about the nature of ritual practice, whether shrine work or pouring libation or spirit possession, spirit communication, talismans, amulets, all these different things that we engage in and the functionality of these ritual practices. And then Kukutuntum, the ancestral jurisdiction, where we lay out the cosmological foundation of creation, dealing with the Mother and Great Father, Amen and Amenet, the Creator and Creatress, Ra and Ra'et, who are grandchildren of the Supreme Being, Amen and Amenet. We talk about the nature of the deities and their relationship to us, the nature of the ancestors and ancestors, their relationship to us. And then we go into detail proving that Jesus, Moses, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik, Muhammad, Allah, Yahweh, Buddha, Brahman, all of these characters are fictional cartoon characters who never existed of any race or in any form whatsoever. And we prove all of that. So that's in the Kukutuntum. So that first set of 5 books is 20% off, which is 5 books for $40. You can order that set. Any order of 10 books or more is automatically 30% off. So the first 10 books, for example, are $66 for 10 books. So we have that. That's part of the piece. So this event coming up, as with all of our events, as we said, free event. You'll receive one of the books, the book Kemet, Hina, Ntoro, The Black Nation and Divinity, talking about the origin of the term Kemet, as well as the origin of the term Ntoro, so-called Neter, how it's found in our ancestral languages today and what it actually represents, and how it's connected to our blood circles and so forth. We're the first to publish that information. You'll receive a free copy of that. All that information is on the site. If you'd like to support that work that we are doing, because we want to continue to give away the free books, and it also allows us, when you purchase the books, or you make a donation to our fundraiser for our institution, that allows us to continue to rent out these venues and continue the free book giveaways. And it will also assist us in assisting the presenter that we want to have come out with travel expenses to come out, because as with all of our events, when we have the different presenters, they are free. They don't charge, attendees to come in. So these are free events. So if you'd like to support the work that we are doing, go to the Guamu Casa page or the publications page. You'll see the information. You can purchase one of the books or a few of the books or make a donation. Yedase, we appreciate that. Yedase, for a couple of people who made purchases over the past 2 days, and we appreciate that support. Okay, we're going to get back to the phone line real quick. Michiawa on the phone line. You got a question or a comment?
Michiamo. Good evening, everybody. How you doing, Quasi?
Good. How are you?
Okay. I was calling now. You said something you already mentioned about ancient Kanat. That's what my question was related to, the ancient times. I was wondering, in ancient Ghana, were we called the Akan in ancient Ghana as well? But, I know you did mention the same thing was in ancient Kanat as what the Akan are today. But was the Ghana, ancient Ghana, because there was the ancient Ghana, as you taught us. And then you said that the people separated because they were invaded, something like that?
Right. So just to give that chronology, so when you look at for example, in the most recent, next to most recent book that we released, Akradin Bosom, the deities of the Akan 7-day week and the soul, the Okra. So, of course, we talked about the deities that govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies of the 7-day week, and all Akan people have a Kradin or soul name based on that deity that governs our Kra, our soul, our head. Volume 1 of Akradin Bosom, talking about these deities. In Volume 1, we talk about the origin of the Akan people, and we talk about that whole migratory route. So we start in ancient Kanat, the Kan land. That is a title of ancient Nubia. So when Akan people today say, well, you ask Akan people, why do you call yourselves Akan? You look in the Akan language, Kan means first, foremost, from the beginning. Kan also means to count, to calculate, or reckon. That's in the Akan language. If you look in the Medutu, the hieroglyphs of ancient Kemet, and look at the language, the term Kan means first, foremost, from the beginning. Kan also means to count, to calculate, or reckon. Talking about the first people to engage in calculation or measurement and utilizing that as the foundation for establishing patterns, cities, and so forth, foundation of civilization. So Kan meaning first, foremost, from the beginning, talking about a component part of the first people who came from the beginning, the origin of the world, but Kan also meaning to count, calculate, or reckon, to measure, the first people to engage that practice of civilization. It's also the title of the people themselves, the Kan people, or Akani, and so forth. You look at ancient Nubia, it's called Kanat land, or the Kanit land, the first land, foremost land, land of the beginning, and the people are called the Kanit or Kanitu, the Kan people. So that's a title of ancient Nubia. In the south, we also show that west of Kemet, in the so-called Libyan desert, or so-called Libya, the people are called Kanu as well, the so-called Libyans, the Kanu people. Another definition of Kanu also means light, shining, brilliant, sparkling. In the language of ancient Kemet, you also find in the Akan language, Kan means light, brilliant, luminous, and so forth. Talking about the light of civilization, but also people getting possessed by the deities, Ra and Ra'et, we call it Yonkumpon and Yonkunton and so forth, bringing that light of Bosom, being possessed by these fiery spirits, and that's where the capacity to align with the forces in nature and understanding order of creation, because we're aligning with the forces that govern that order and creation, and we can bring that light of civilization, counting, measuring, reckoning, and so forth, first people. So Kan means first from the beginning, first foremost from the beginning, Kan meaning to count, calculate, or reckon, Kan meaning light, luminous, shining. All three definitions related to the Akan people in the Akan language. All three definitions you find in the ancient language for the people as well as the name of the land. In south of Kemet, the Kanat land, so-called Nubia. West of Kemet, in the so-called Libyan desert, the western desert of Kemet, called the Kan land, and the people called the Kanu people, later called Libyan. Now, at the end of the quote-unquote fall of civilization, when the Greeks and then the Romans invaded, some of our people began to migrate west, some further south and remain further south. They continue with the civilization of Napata, south of Kemet, and then later Meroe, south of Kemet, going all the way into the so-called 4th century AD. We were still maintaining the civilization. and some even further than that in Kemet and so forth. But some of our people migrated west a couple of thousand years ago and reestablished the Kana Empire that later became known as the Ghana Empire, or the Empire of Ghana. And that was a great civilization, of course. And then, because of Muslim invasions about 1,000 years ago, some of our people migrated from there and went further south towards the regions of the savannah, the so-called forest belt, in the regions of what is today called Ghana and Ivory Coast. We reestablished ourselves there, reestablished civilization, Akana civilization, and continue to practice. And then hundreds of years later, some of us were taken from there and forced into the Western Hemisphere during the enslavement era, the Musu Okesie, as we call it, the great perversity of the enslavement era. So yes, we've been calling ourselves Akana or Khan for thousands of years, all the way into North America, because the Hoodoo people, the Undu people, which there's a title of Ancient Nubia, and we show this in our book, Hoodoo People, in the Medusa, the ancient empire of Kanat or Ghana or Kanat Nubia is also called the Undu land, and the people are called the Undu people in the Medusa in the hieroglyphs. So we called ourselves Kanat people. We also called ourselves Undu people. We called the land the Kanat land, and we called the land the Undu land. That's in ancient times. Then we moved to the western part of the continent. We continue to use the same terminology. Then some of us were forced into the Western Hemisphere, and we still call ourselves Kana people, or Akan man, Akan woman. Still call ourselves Hoodoo people, Hoodoo man, Hoodoo woman. So we've been saying these terms for thousands of years. When we were in the east, in the region of today's Sudan and Egypt, when we got the western part of the continent, in the ancient empire of Ghana, we continue to call ourselves Akan, and then all the way up until today. So yes, it's been an unbroken tradition. Even when we get here in the Western Hemisphere and not fluent with the language, when we identify ourselves as a group, as well as with regard to our religious practices, as well as the way we name our children, we still are using Akan names and titles and functions and so forth.
Okay. All right. Okay. I see where it comes from. All right. So the next question I have is, I'm trying to figure out if all people were black people, where did Assyrians come from? 600 BCE. Where did Greeks come from? Where did these people come from?
Okay, so when you look at we did a broadcast on Nipa and the creation of the human being. So we went into some detail about that, and we go into detail about it also in the book, one of our books, Kukutuntun, the Ancestral Jurisdiction, as well as we talk about the question as well in the Akradin Bosom book, especially with regard to reincarnation and so forth. So when you're looking at ancient, even in our ancient texts, which comport with what the recent DNA studies are talking about. Our people are all black, of course. We're in Afuraitkaitnut. We migrated into southern Europe and southern Asia and so forth. Eventually, we migrated to North Central South America thousands of years ago before any other group exists on Earth. A small percentage of our people who are in southern Europe, drawn up into northern Eurasia. They isolated in that area during the last ice age, so they're not moving around because they're isolated. They can't move around. But the reason they're isolated or separated, when people separate from us, is because of criminality. They engage in criminality, whether it's murder or rape or whatever it is, incest, insane. We kill people who are engaged in that kind of criminality. But some would escape that killing. They become exiled. They exile themselves because they escaped that killing. But some of them got isolated when the climate changes, and they're isolated in northern Eurasia. They couldn't move back and forth to southern Eurasia even if they wanted to. So they were up in northern Eurasia during the Ice Age, but it wasn't just the ice. They were engaged, of course, in inbreeding, and inbreeding creates a large population of albinos. Inbreeding greatly increases the incidence of albinism. It also increases the incidence of genetic mutations and so forth. So that extra vitiligo characteristic that manifests as white skin and light hair and all of that, that's genetic mutation. when people look at the human genome and the studies of the human genome and so forth, it all lines up with the same narrative. They're isolated in that region because of that inbreeding and so forth, that genetic mutation, that result of inbreeding, as well as their diet changes, of course, and that causes morphological characteristics to manifest in a perverse manner. So they no longer have full lips and nose and everything else. They become contorted. Just like someone who develops rickets or something like that, their bones become contorted. And you have a disease, your bones become contorted, they're not fully forming and so forth. The morphological structure of the whites and their offspring, the shapes of their noses and lips and eyes, so that's a contortion. That's not natural. That's a contortion. That's corrupt. That's degenerate. Disfigurement. So when they look at the dietary practices of people who are isolated in those regions and weren't getting the same nutrients, as well as the the lack of sunlight and so forth, you start seeing the morphological characteristics of the shapes of the bones and so forth becoming contorted, disfigured. They continue to inbreed and continue to proliferate these contorted, disfigured morphological characteristics. And of course, because of this higher incidence of albinism and extra vitiligo characteristics, that melanin is breeded out. And so then when the ice melted and they began to invade southern Europe about 12,000 years ago, the so-called Near East and further into the East, these are the whites in their offspring. They have lost that pigmentation. Just like somebody can lose pigmentation in their lifetime through vitiligo and they get totally stripped of their melanin and their skin is white, that's disease. That's not natural. It's not, divine. That's disease. So these people are living like that for thousands of years, inbreeding and passing on these genetic mutations. But the key is the reason that they were separated in the first place. Going against divine order, you lose your kra. The divinity that dwells in the head region doesn't participate in disorder. So when you engage in that separate from you, now you're a spirit without a kra. You're disfigured spiritually. And of course, that's going to manifest physically. That's the real reason that they're separate. So, but genetically, yes, they're white skin and so forth, and then they start migrating and invading southern Europe and the Near East and eventually North Afuraitkaitnut, thousands of years trying to take over our civilizations. It took them thousands of years because we were destroying them for thousands of years militarily. So they start to try to infiltrate through trade and commerce and trying to figure out who's fighting against who and trying to get on the side of the people who are fighting. They're a little bit stronger than the others and so forth. It took them thousands of years to finally infiltrate. They didn't take over ancient Kemet when they first got there. The Greeks took over in so-called 332 BC, 2,300 years ago. But their forebears got there thousands of years before that. They just were not strong enough to take over. It took them thousands of years. They can call themselves Greeks and call themselves Romans and call themselves Syrians and call themselves, they can come up with all kinds of titles. Those titles ultimately are meaningless. They're practice. They're from the same group that came out of northern Eurasia, bleached out. Some of them settled in different areas, and because they settled in different areas, they call themselves by different names. But those names are meaningless. These are spirits of disorder, white skin, and so forth, and that's all they are. Parasites, cancer cells in the body of black humanity who only deserve extermination. There's no reparation. There's no reunion or restoration. They only deserve complete extermination.
And what I want to say, their behavior is exactly the way you describe them, as if they know this. They know this, what you're saying. They know who they are and what they are. And yet they have a great way of flipping this notion and making us think that there's something wrong with us. You know how they do with the, we have the good hair and you don't, and all those ploys that they use, and that's what lets you know they know what you just saying. So that's been the whole game the whole time. And what is this thing about Syria? Now, Ramses II was fighting at Syria, fighting at Kadesh. Then you have KANKYE fighting for Syria. What is this thing over Syria? That's so. Is it that it's connected to the Jezreel Valley, which I did see that, and it is beautiful. It's like such a flourishing land. So is this what this Syria is about? And I think they even talking about it today, where they got these wars is over this Syria. What is this? Syria, Palestine, or?
Well, Syria is north of Palestine. It's nothing special per se about Syria. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons why our people went that far north into Syria, it wasn't something special about the area per se, but what it was before the whites and their offspring invaded, we were already in the area. So when Ramesu II is going up there, they're defending part of the larger Kemethi Empire. Before it was part of the Kemethi Empire, there were black people living in those areas. Black people were living in the Near East, and the Europeans invaded. Prior to the Europeans invading, there were just jet black people living in Southern Europe, the so-called Near East, and Asia, and so forth. The whites and their offspring invade, and that includes the Near East, but it includes the regions of Syria and so forth. So at some point, they call for some backup. Our people call for some backup. Kemet colonizes certain areas up all the way up towards into southern Syria, and they needed some protection. And since we colonized that area as part of the empire, the further reaches north of the empire, then of course they're going to go and wage war. The whites and their offspring in certain areas like the Mitanni Empire and certain other areas, some of them were stronger in certain areas than they were in other areas. So they were fighting harder in certain areas because they had coalesced in certain areas. They also had black people fighting in their armies, just like the United States. When they invade a country, it says, well, the United States came and destroyed this country. But then you have hundreds of thousands of black soldiers who are fighting amongst, in the military, but they don't say, hey, the blacks and the whites came over here and attacked Afghanistan and Iraq. They just say the United States attacked Afghanistan and Iraq. In the Mitanni Empire and other places, there were black people, the original people there. Some people were on different sides of the conflict. So they had strong black soldiers fighting on their side as well as on the black side. So some of the armies were more powerful than other armies in other areas, so-called Near East. So
okay,
they were a little bit stronger in some other areas in the so the battle was more pitched and it was more more storied as a battle because of course they wrote about it and you see the Battle of Kadesh in the inscriptions in ancient texts, and the Mitanni people have their own version of what happened and so forth. They ended up having a truce and so forth. A number of different things happened with regard to that, and it changed the political makeup of the area after we pulled back, so to speak. So there was nothing in particular sacred about Syria. It so happens that that's where it was taking place.
Just that in those eras, we ran those empires as well. That's what that was. We were just protecting that part of it. Okay, and to speak of another war, that Adwa War with Menelik, is that a true happening with Ethiopia and the Italians?
Yes, the Battle of Adwa. Yes, that was now, as far as, yes, they pulled together, to a certain extent, they pulled together a number of groups. The Ethiopians did, under the leadership of Menelik, so-called the second. We say Menelik, so-called the second, because even though that was his title, he was naming himself after Menelik the first, the son of Solomon and Sheba. But of course, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik never existed. They're fictional characters from the Bible. So he couldn't really be Menelik the second. There was never really a Menelik the first. That's no different than Santa Claus saying, I'm Santa Claus the second. So, but Menelik the second, he was the ruler at that particular time. The Italians were coming. So they were like, we need to band together, even though we've been, rivals in these different provinces and so forth. But we at least need to band together for now. And maybe after that, we can go back to what we've been doing. But right now, let's band together to defeat them. So from that side, from that perspective, it was effective. because they did defeat the Italians, and that was a big defeat because the Italians under Mussolini, and they were promoting this whole notion. Later on, of course, promoting the whole notion under Mussolini and then Hitler and so forth together that white Aryan supremacy. But when the Ethiopians defeated the Italians, that was a death blow to that whole notion. Just like J.C. Owens, defeating Hitler's Aryan quote-unquote supremacists in his own stadium, in his own country, the death blow to this whole notion of white Aryan supremacy. So on that side, it was effective to defeat them. From the outside looking in. From the inside looking out, it wasn't the same. People were not so excited. It was good to defeat the Italians, but some of those people were allying with the Italians. Menelik and his regime were torturing the Oromo people because they weren't Christians. So you have one black group torturing another black group because they weren't bowing down to Christianity. So in that sense, they were agents. Menelik II and his regime were agents of the whites and their offspring because they were butchering some of these people. And the same thing happened with Haile Selassie when he usurped the, kingship and so forth from the quote-unquote rightful heir. They were butchering the Oromo people, trying to force them into Christianity, and the Oromo people are still fighting against this. Still, that war has been going on for over 100 years. So while they were, on one hand, fought that Battle of Ottawa to defeat the Italians, on the other hand, many people, Oromo and others, see them as sellouts because they were allying in many respects with the whites and so forth, and allowing them to come in and do a number of different things. So we have to look at both sides. Very often they'll just put out the narrative, that's very, it looks very good from their perspective. They don't give the whole story. They don't give the whole story of the internecine fighting, interclan wars and so forth that have been raging for over a century and still dispossessing the Oromo people of their traditional homelands because many of them still hold on to their ancestral religious practices. Some of them have fallen into Islamic nonsense, but many of them are still practicing ancestral religion. There's a battle between those who practice ancestral religion and the brainwashed Negroes who are Christians and Muslims trying to force that idiocy on the traditional people.
So the Oromo are those people in the Eritrean areas?
In the region of, if you look at the region of Ethiopia, Eritrea, Djibouti, all of that whole region, because, some of these borders are rather recent. So they haven't always been fixed the way they are, even with Eritrea breaking away and establishing themselves as an independent nation, which is, anytime people break away and, become free and independent and autonomous, that's typically a good thing. But those borders have been kind of fluid over the past few hundred years. So that region, there are about 30 million Oromo people, but they're not allowed to fully operate in an autonomous way on their own homeland because they've always had these other individuals trying to force Christianity and other idiocy upon them. So they've been fighting that battle for over a century.
So that's still like an ongoing thing with being compromised.
Right.
Is it today? Just like we do here. The same thing's going on here. Okay.
It is.
All
but
right.
then at the same time, there the more people who get involved, and one of the ways that we impact what's happening on the continent, we've had people who are Oromo people contact us from the continent as well as those who are here, thanking us for the information we put out to bring light to what's going on with the Oromo people. Also, spreading the information, the publications we have, because some of those Oromo people who are falling into Islam and stuff like that, now they're returning to their ancestral religious traditions. We have some Ethiopians as well as some Eritreans who are deciding that they're going to reject that Christian nonsense, trying to pretend like they're descended from Solomon and all this other foolishness. They're rejecting that nonsense and returning to their ancestral religion that's pre-Christianity. A lot of the brainwashed Negroes who are Ethiopians and Eritreans and so forth, they'll try to pretend like they've always been Christians from the beginning, as though that's reality, and they have not. So because of the work that we're doing, some of them have began to reject Christianity and go back to their ancestral religious practices. And their ancestral religious practices are the same as hoodoo and voodoo and juju and everything else, because we're engaged in real ancestral religion. So we have an impact when Afuraitkaitnut people over here begin to re-embrace our ancestral culture and reject Christianity and reject Islam and reject Hebrewism, Judaism, all that stupidity, Moorishism, all that foolishness, and return to our ancestral religious practice. We impact people in West Afuraitkaitnut, South, Central, as well as East. And we've had contact from people all over the continent letting us know that. So it's starting a revolutionary process there, just based on the work that we're doing here. So the more of our people return to our traditions, the more we affect them spiritually. It's just like we say, you have a tuning fork, you make it oscillate, you put another one near it, they oscillate at the same frequency. And we are all connected as Afuraitkaitnut people wherever we are in the world. So when we begin to oscillate at a harmonious frequency, we begin to stimulate them wherever they are in the world. Their Odumafo have already been trying to communicate with them to snap them out of that coma, to break free from that nonsense, just like our people here who are still involved in Christianity and Islam and all that foolishness. We're beginning to break through and snap them out of that coma. The same thing happens when we engage ritual practice. It strengthens that communication. So they begin to snap out that coma on the continent and start rejecting Christianity and even ridiculing Christianity and Islam and showing their kids and raising their kids back into their ancestral culture, taking on their ancestral names and so forth. So, but we got a couple, we only got a couple of minutes left in the broadcast. So, Yada said we appreciate that call.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
And let me see, just want to make sure didn't miss anything in the chat room. Okay, so was our one question, what was our trigger to invade, conquer other nations? Okay, and before we finish reading that question, there's 90 seconds left in the online version of the broadcast. If you want to listen beyond 11 o'clock, you must call in and get on the phone line. You only have about a minute to do so, because after the minute, if you're listening just online, it will cut off for the people who are on the phone. They'll be able to hear beyond 11 o'clock. The call-in number is 657, you'll see it on the screen, 657-0635, 657-383-0635. You have about a minute to call in. And we won't go too much longer over time. This question, what was our trigger to invade, conquer other nations, groups? Echiwadie, of course, and Echiwadie means taboo. Echiwadie fo, the spirits of disorder, the whites and offspring, the taboo, divinely hated people. That's the term we utilize in Akan Mayn, in the Akan tradition. So, is it an abandonment of ancestral communication or obedience, or were Echiwadie, or the whites and offspring, infecting us by then? And as nations, I mean other human families. So, anytime we engage in some kind of invasion or conquering that's not of our own people, that's not based on us defending ourselves, then it's going against divine order. We're never directed to just engage in some kind of empire building. That's the mindset of the whites and their offspring, but that's not our mindset. We live in harmony with the earth mother. We live in harmony with order. There's no need for us to invade or attack and try to exercise control over other Afurakanu people. That hasn't been our practice. Some people, once they have a powerful, nation or polity and so forth, if they're lustful, you have a ruler who's lustful or somebody in power who's lustful, they would try to engage in that kind of self-destructive behavior. They're typically isolated and removed. This is how we're able to have a civilization, for example, in Kemet, that lasts thousands of years, of monarchy lasting thousands of years. Nobody else in the world has monarchies in the same region lasting for thousands of years. The same governing structure, same groups of people, same ancestral religious practice. Of course, we're the only people who have real ancestral religious practice, period. But to be able to maintain civilized society for thousands of years, that's a testament to the fact that the infrastructure of the culture is ancestral religion. The infrastructure of ancestral religion is divine order. Everything in its proper place in the proper time. But when you engage in self-destructive behavior, engage in lust or malice and so forth, then you can fall into self-destructive behaviors and schemes. But usually there's a correction. Just like some of your cells can go off of the beaten path. They become self-destructive or cancerous, but you have an immune system that destroys them so your body can continue doing what it's doing. So you have cells that go crazy every now and then. But because you have an infrastructure in place that's informed by the order that your body, the orderly template that your body is built upon, then when some cells go a little bit crazy, then the immune system, lymphatic system steps in and eradicates that, so it's a temporary aberration. But if something happens where those cells can avoid that attack and hide out in a certain organ or gland and so forth and begin to proliferate, then cancer develops. And then you have a problem. But then your immune system, lymphatic system kicks into high gear and it destroys that. So you can have cancerous cells that develop within the society on a regular basis. But we typically isolate them and destroy them, excise them from the body, these cancerous tumorous type individuals. You will always have some people like that. They rise up, they get destroyed, and that's the end of it, and the civilization continues. Every now and then, some of those cancerous cells will separate, isolate themselves, and give themselves space to grow and proliferate, and then they try to come back and attack the larger group. If you have an infrastructure in place, you can destroy that as well. If you don't, then they may try to attack the larger group and not be successful, but then they stay on the outskirts and they continue to grow and proliferate until they try to come in and wait for some internal strife, some internal fracturing within the society, and see which side they can play against the other side and assist one side to defeat the other side. And now they're like parasites, parasitically living off of the side that won and gaining some loyalty from the side that won because they assisted them in their battle. All those different political dynamics began to take place, and over the course of decades or centuries, you may have a rot that sets in, and then you have problems. And then eventually you have somebody who rises up, a group or a clan who wants to restore order and return things back to the way they were. And there's a cultural resolution, and things are restored to order, and then you move forward for the next few hundred years. So our civilizations have been maintained like that for hundreds of years or thousands of years because we have an infrastructure, divine order that governs everything. But the central point you made about abandonment, ancestral communication, or obedience, yes, the foundation of any disorder that manifests in a society or in your own behavior or in your own home is some form of disalignment from divine order, the order of Amen, and Amenet. Some manner or some measure of disalignment from your own Kra, your soul, divine consciousness, which is the seat of order within your spiritual body. Some small measure or great measure of disalignment leads to some measure of disorder somewhere. And if you don't correct that, then it will continue to metastasize until you have a greater problem. But that's always the root of everything. It's usually prompted by misguided desire, which is lust. Sometimes criminal intent to destroy, which is malice. But very often it's a misguided desire for certain things, lustful desire for control or power or material goods or something that you don't have. And then if that is allowed to continue, then it turns into something much greater. So that would be the answer, our answer to that. So after 11 o'clock, we're going to end the broadcast here. We're going to be back on tomorrow for Ojira purification. So if you have any questions or comments, you can send us an email. Check out the link on the publications page, the Nhoma page on the website. Also, we have our separate social media network, which is ojiraman.spruce.com, ojiraman, ODWIRAMAN, ojiraman.spruce, SPRUZ.com. That's our own separate social media network, and that's separate that we pay for, because, of course, we need to have platforms outside of Facebook and Instagram and other networks that they will control and kick you off of and everything else because you're not, or you're posting too much accurate information. So you can sign up for that. Of course, it's open to our people only. It's no different than Facebook, really. You can create a profile, post blogs and the forums and images and videos and everything else. People studying the same information, of course, in this country and around the world. Our people only. And once again, the publications, if you'd like to order the book that we were talking about today, the Hoodoo People book, the Hoodoo Mayn, Hoodoo Nation Journal book, which is the other one, Kemet, Hina, and Toro, the Black Nation and Divinity, the Akradeen Bosom book, where we talk about ancient Kanat and Akan culture. It also deals with reincarnation and that whole process of when the spirit separates from the body, goes to the ancestral realm, eventually going to Nyame Nyame, receiving a divinity installed in the head region of soul, the divine consciousness, the specific force of creation, going back into the spirit realm, ancestral realm, and then going into the womb to await reincarnation. All of that, that whole process we lay out in the Akradeen Bosom book. And our entire set of 24 books, go to the Nhoma page, the publications page on our website, and you can make that order. They range, again, between $8 and $11, and we have discounts as well. So again, yet I say we thank you for tuning into the broadcast, and Yebeshabio, we will meet again. That's up.